Boy and Dog, Part 2. Spark runs to Grandma, who is taking wash off the line. "Grandma, some actor folks came by with a star and moon wagon. They journeyed past the land of happiness." Spark takes hold of the laundry draped over Grandma's shoulder. "Huh," she says. Grandma hands more laundry to him while he fidgets. "I could go and see if Papa is there." Grandma says, "Do your lessons, grandson. See to your chores." "But Grandma..." "Spark." Spark starts off and then turns back tentatively. "Mama, she'd want me to find him certain." "Huh. Your mama wouldn't want you joining her in heaven, now would she, 'cause of taking that dangerous journey?" Spark trudges towards the cabin, Chipper following. At the clearing near their cabin, while Spark chops logs, an idea appears. He drops the axe, picks up a stick, raises it like a sword, and attacks a tree limb, an imaginary enemy. "Take that and that, you villain! Ho! My sword's too much for you, huh? Running away, are you?" He turns to other foes. "All right, the rest of you, lay down your weapons and..." A sound makes him turn. Grandpa comes into the clearing, reading a book held in one hand, while with the other leads their horse, Old Nell, pulling a wagon displaying a hand-printed sign, "Leather Craftsman." Spark runs to Grandpa. "Grandpa, you're back!" Grandpa puts his book away and clasps Spark's shoulders. "Now then," he said, "let me look at you." He nods his head, satisfied. Grandpa starts to lead Old Nell to a tree, but Spark says, "Let me do that, Grandpa." He takes Old Nell's reins. Grandpa says, "Thank you, lad." Grandpa sits on a tree stump as Spark ties the reins to a limb, then rolls a log close to Grandpa and looks up expectantly. "Grandpa?" And Grandpa says, "Your grandma, she's well, grandson?" "Oh, yes, certain, but..." "And school?" "Oh, it's middlin', but Grandpa, in those far villages, did you see a magical place, like the land of happiness?" Sharply, Grandpa asks, "Where did you hear of that?" "Old folks some, and then play actors. They passed by it. Maybe Papa is there." Grandpa says, "Don't be fretting, lad. Your pa'll be coming home one day." But Spark says, "Grandpa, I want to search for him." Grandpa says, "When you're older, grandson, we'll speak of this." "Grandpa, I want to find him fierce." Grandpa says, "I can see that. A time will come. Well, I'm heading homewards, lad. Been quite a spell not seeing your grandma." He goes to Old Nell and unties the reins. Grandpa asks, "Much chopping left to be done?" "A bit more, Grandpa." Grandpa says, "Good. You'll be coming up shortly?" "As soon as can be." Grandpa heads homeward. Spark resumes chopping. Chipper runs in and jumps on him, knocking him to the ground. "Ho! Where have you been, huh? Chasing after the poor squirrels again?" They wrestle a bit, then lay down. Spark looks at the sky. "Chip, look at that cloud. A brave night, see? Just like Papa, I'll wager." Spark's cloud night is seen above. At the cabin, approaching the cabin, Grandpa sees Grandma fetching water from their well. She catches sight of him and waves happily. He joins her, and they walk to the corral. Grandma comes through the door and heads for the dish cabinet. Grandpa enters, carrying the water. Grandma chides him with affection. "Mind your shoes." Grandpa says, "Yes, yes." He opens the door and wipes his shoes as he speaks over his shoulder. Haven't been journeying away that long that I'm forgetting your promptings. Grandma smiles contentedly. Grandma asks, many folks buying shoes this trip? Grandpa says, fair amount. Huh, Grandma says, I should think lots. True special they are. Where's Spark? Finishing the logs, Grandpa says. After a while, Grandma says, Spark's been asking about his pa of late. Grandpa says, he's wanting to search for him. Grandma says, he can't be doing that. What's got into that boy? Spark hurries through the door, carrying chopped wood, which he deposits by the fireplace. He nods to Grandpa and says to Grandma, evening, Grandma. Spark washes up, then slicks down his hair with wet hands and goes to the table. Spark says to Grandpa, mighty fine you being home, Grandpa. Grandpa says, I sorely missed you and your grandma. After a bit, Grandma says to Spark, your grandpa says, you've been talking again about going on a journey. Oh, yes, remember I told you about the land of happiness and Papa could be there? Grandma says, your pa. Grandma looks at Grandpa. A young boy going off by himself? Grandpa wags his head. No. Oh, but lots of heroes go off young. In books, Grandma, I've read that. Grandpa says, Spark, if Papa is in that special land, I could find him. We could bring back treasures. Grandpa says, grandson, I could... Grandma says, that's enough, Spark. After eating, you finish your chores, but after chores, get yourself up them stairs, do your book learning. Spark gives Grandpa an imploring look, but Grandpa says, grandson. Spark trudges out of the cabin. Corral near the cabin, summer. Under the blazing sun, Spark pitches hay, mucks out the stall, then lugs water to the trough. Finally, he picks up the horse's brush. Old Nell moseys over. Spark says to her, 'Member Papa? He rode you, I'll wager. Sure. Spark throws his arms around the horse's neck, hangs on her. Vegetable garden near the cabin, fall. Spark is kneeling, doing the weeding around the garden. After a time he sits back, sketches the picture of a night in the dirt. Inside the cabin, night in the winter. Grandpa and Spark sit bundled up, sewing shoes by lamplight, wind howling outside. Spark begins to doze. Grandpa calls, Spark. He jolts awake. Grandpa examines Spark's work critically, and then says, "This won't do, grandson." Spark nods, ashamed, and resumes sewing with greater care, his cold, pricked fingers a hindrance. Grandpa glances at Spark, concerned. In front of the cabin, early evening, spring. A table is set for supper. Grandma calls to Grandpa and Spark, who are out of sight. "Hey there, you two. You hearin' me? Come up to supper." Grandpa says, "Yes, yes, we heard. We're coming." Grandpa comes into view with Spark and Chipper trailing behind. Grandma calls with false joviality, her concern for Spark apparent. "You got a good appetite with you, lad? Your favorite eats is here." Spark says, "Good, Grandma." The two reach the table and settle down. Grandma says to Spark, "Some milk, lad?" Spark doesn't hear. Grandma says, "Grandson?" Startled, he looks up. "Some milk for ya?" "Oh," Spark says, "No, thank you, Grandma." "Look here, young man, you haven't swallowed enough of late to fatten a mouse." Spark, "I did eat some, but I'm just not hungry right now. Can I go down by the creek for a while?" Grandma looks at Grandpa, who nods. "Yes, you go on down. It should be real pretty 'bout now." Spark and Chipper start down the path. Spark wanders past the clearing and arrives at a creek which is straddled by an arched bridge. Gradually, a beguiling voice of a guide who is never seen calls out, "Your guide, guide to the land of happiness, where dreams abide. Follow me." Spark rushes to the bridge, starts to climb up, then stops, gaping at its height. The guide's enticing voice is closer. "Follow me. Come this way." Spark looks around, searching for its source. The guide continues, "The land of happiness. Follow me. There's still time." The guide's soft, mocking chuckle fades into the distance.